for as long as I can remember on the internet, the prime versus zoom lens debate has kind of pointlessly carried on. And the answer is always the same. You want versatility, you go for a zoom lens. You want image quality, you go for a prime lens. There are a few other bits we'll touch on in here, but basically that is no longer the case. There's some important information you need to understand when choosing between primes and zooms for your lens choice, because it's not the old argument of do you want versatility or do you want image quality? So before we get to that, let's look at how we got to this point, because understanding that is key. So for a long time, optical performance was far, far better with a prime lens. And we had what was called a fast lens. Now, a fast lens is an aperture like f1, f1.2, f0.95, those sorts of things. And the reason we needed those lenses was because film sensitivity and digital sensor sensitivity was not high enough to get enough light in to create an image. So we made faster lenses. The downside, and this is where it gets interesting, to a faster lens is you don't get as much in focus. The way that lens manufacturers sold it to you all was bokeh. And you'll have found from 2008 until not that long ago, internet forums crammed full of, you know the types, arguing over which type of bokeh was best. That's right, arguing over which type of the out of focus part of the image was worth spending thousands of pounds on. Thankfully, we've all got past bokeh. It's done and we'll never revisit it again if all goes well. But the sharpness back then of a prime lens was considerably better than a zoom lens. Let me show you. This was my camera of choice back in the day. This is the 1DS Mark II and the 24 to 72.8. A notoriously bad lens. It is soft until you get to like f11 and even then, meh. This was functionality. When I was a wedding photographer, this was the rig. This was the setup. 580EX on the top, battery pack with 8 AA's underneath it, blitzing the whole day. This lens would get you through the entire job, but you suffered for image quality. When it came to the portraits, you cracked out your 85 and your 35 prime because the image quality would be so much better. But they weren't versatile enough during the rest of the day to shoot with, was the argument of zoom shooters. However, myself, I did this, I got bored of this, I threw it away, and I shot weddings on a 35 and an 85. Because I like to hold the camera up and know exactly what it's going to look like. And this is an important part because this changes as we get through this video. When I've got a 24 to 70, if I lift it up, it could be anywhere from 24 to 70. And because there's all these bits in between it, I don't know what 58.7 millimeters looks like, but I do know what my 35 millimeter prime looks like. That always looks the same. Now, even up until very recently, and going forward, I shoot on prime lenses for still life because I know exactly what I want it to look like. There's a few issues with zooms, like zoom creep and all the rest of it. But these prime lenses, these were made in the 80s and 90s. These are amazing. These are Secor lenses. These are super sharp, resolve well over the 100 megapixels of my camera. These are the professional choice. And if you'd have asked me 2 months ago, will I be shooting on zooms or primes for the rest of my career? I'd have told you, obviously, primes. My work is detailed, it's sharp, and why not have the best image quality possible? I'd slowly started changing my tune. This is a cheap Sigma Art zoom lens on my 6K. Up until recently, this was just used for YouTube camera stuff. But I used my Zeiss lenses on this, and I left this on because I'd already got the focusing rig on, and I shot my recent videos with it. I couldn't tell the difference. But that's video, that's moving. You don't need as much sharpness and detail, I feel, despite the fact you can spend a fortune on video lenses, in a video setup as you do a still setup. That's where it really matters, right? That's where, I mean, you want characteristics in terms of video, which this lens has none, but it's great for YouTube because of that. But you don't necessarily care about the sharpness. So my Zeiss lenses went because this did a job that I couldn't tell the difference of, and it's much more versatile and it's much cheaper. And then we started shooting portraits. Now, as I approached my portrait work, I realized I'd sold all my Canon lenses, but I found this in a cupboard. This is my 24 to 105. This is a dog of a lens in terms of image quality, but I shot the first lot with it because I wasn't sure what I'd need focal length-wise. And then when I went to shoot my big sort of first foray into portraiture with my Fuji GFX, I rented all the Fuji lenses. I'm going to show you some images here to make my point. I shot with the 80mm prime. This is their standard, like super sharp, super detailed prime lens. And I shot with their 45 to 100mm zoom lens. And of course, it was more practical using the zoom lens because I didn't have to keep changing between the 80, the 60 and all the rest of it. But it wasn't until afterwards in post-production. And this is where I came into the office, I sat here and I started comparing shots. And I said to Rob, my retoucher, I said, Rob, that prime lens is so sharp. And then I saw in the corner of it, this was the zoom lens. The zoom lens was so sharp, I didn't recognize it as a zoom. Now, of course, the prime lens is sharper. When you look at the lens scores and all the rest of it, it is absolutely sharper, but my eyes aren't. My eyes can't see it. These peepers here, it's beyond the resolution that they can actually take in. So the zoom lens has become good enough to compete with primes. And yes, on a technical spec sheet, of course it's not. In a letting lots of light in, of course it's not. But I don't need either of those two things because technical sheets be damned, I look with my eyes and I've got tens of thousands of watt seconds of broncolor lighting in here, so it doesn't bother me. So here's what I think now. And yes, I am now buying the zoom lens for my Fuji rather than the prime, but here's what I think. If you're, and again, mass generalities. If you're shooting still life, prime lenses are probably still the way to go because certain brands of zoom lenses, my Sigma for example, if I tip the camera at an angle, it zooms itself out. That's annoying. Prime lenses are great for that. If you shoot documentary, I still believe prime lenses are best, not because of image quality, not because of fast apertures, because let's face it, ISO is amazing. Even medium format ISO is insane today, whereas before medium format was 50 or 100 ISO. You know, now you can shoot at 3200 ISO on a medium format camera, which is mind-blowing to someone of my generation. You don't need 1.2 anymore. No one wants bokeh. But I believe that in terms of knowing your lens and knowing your composition, if you have to get a shot in a pinch, having a fixed focal length is better because you know it inside out. A 35mm lens on a full frame camera, I know exactly what I'm getting. There is no surprise there. There's no zooming and tweaking and missing the moment. However, if you're a studio photographer and you have a little bit more time, but you're not doing still life as such, it's the zoom. For my portrait work going forward, I am a zoom photographer. I am a zoom lens photographer. I've got a bit of time because we're not really capturing the moment. We're no Cartier-Bresson over here. I've got enough time to gather that information, but I don't need to be changing lenses. I can have one lens to rule them all. It'll be like the Lord of the Rings. And I'm gobsmacked at the fact that I can no longer tell the difference between zooms and primes. If you'd have told me that 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you. I mean, zoom's got a lot better. I remember when the 24 to 72.8 EF Mark II came out, everyone was like, it's as sharp as a prime. I shot with it. It was not. But these new generations of zoom lenses are insane, and it is brilliant. If you do not need to be quick in what you're doing in terms of knowing the millimeter, like I say, documentary photographers, if I was still a documentary photographer, I wouldn't be doing this. Get a zoom. Get a zoom. But if not, stick to your primes, not because of image quality, but because you need to understand your focal length. You need to learn it and know it. And, you know, the problem with zoom lenses are they have different characteristics often throughout the zoom range. Sometimes I can spot them. A lot of the times people tell me this stuff. I can't see it. Cannot see it to save my life. But I think it's interesting that it has changed so much in such a short space of time that I thought I'd share my thoughts with you because I'm just a bit dumbstruck, to be honest. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, though, about zooms and primes, because I'd love to know whether I'm just really late to this party or not.